All right, serious question. Do we think Medicare Advantage is peaking? That it has crescendoed and the only place to go from here is either leveling out or going down? If you just look at enrollment headlines over the past decade, you would probably think that MA is completely unstoppable, and I would absolutely agree with you. But if you look at 2026, maybe into 2025, but specifically AEP 26, something's changed. Growth has materially slowed with star ratings dropping across major carriers. The margins across MA are tightening. In fact, the Texas MLRs just posted this past week showing PPO medical loss ratios in the state of Texas for Medicare Advantage plans. Let's take this on without bias and look from an outsider's view into the Medicare Advantage market and what we're seeing. This is Ansel, probably a 5 or 6 Medicare minute. All right, first things first. Medicare Advantage is large. We're talking about over 50% of the Medicare market when you include group plans, regular Medicare Advantage plans, special need plans, under 65 plans. So half of the Medicare enrollment nationally is currently in some form of Medicare Advantage plan. So this isn't like some kind of collapse I'm talking about. But growth size does matter. Growth rate does matter, especially compared to size. For years, MA grew 7 to 10% annually, but now we're seeing significantly slower expansion, which should be a signal to us. The question then is, why would MA growth slow? And really, there are 4 structural pressures that are pushing against MA right now. Firstly, MA relies heavily on CMS rebate dollars. The higher the star ratings that an MA carrier receives, the larger their rebates are. And the larger their rebates, the richer benefits that they can provide on the plan. And when those star ratings drop across all carriers, not just one, which we saw AEP 26, those rebate dollars shrink. And when those rebate dollars shrinks, their supplemental benefits are trimmed and their networks become more narrowed and their cost sharing becomes more on the member, and those $0 plans that are already tight become even tighter. Now, MA plans work extraordinarily when their benefits are rich, right? However, they become significantly more fragile when those margins tighten. CMS has increased their audits, their scrutiny on those RADV audits, right? The risk adjustment coding, the prior authorization processes, and their SSBCI marketing. And right now, what we saw from a carrier today in an email, the broker compensation structure. In a lot of states, this carrier announced in some states you're not going to have a commissionable PPO with them. And they're not the only carrier. This is just one of the larger ones. It's kind of where we are in the market. MA has thrived since 2008, really. But now we're in like a normalization phase where it's reducing the elasticity that Medicare Advantage has. 2026 was a very difficult year for star ratings for carriers across the board. Lower star ratings for an MA carrier means lower bonus revenue and less competitive benefit design and less marketing leverage that they have. And if the star rating volatility continues, those MA plans will become less predictable for the carriers that offer them. I mean, imagine right now during bid season trying to place your bid, not knowing what your star rating may be or what your funding is going to be in 2027. In high penetration counties right now, MA is already running 60, 70% across the board. So there's not as many easy converts that they can bring in. And when the penetration in a county gets high enough, even 1 or 2% growth becomes significantly harder. So at some point, they're not going to be harvesting the low-hanging fruit that they may be going after. The real question, though, is this. Let's get back to it. Is this the peak for Medicare Advantage? Or is this like some plateau before a complete new wave hits? Here's the counter argument to all of it. MA still offers decent $0 premium plans. They still offer really predictable cost sharing with out-of-pocket maximum or caps, nice supplemental benefits, and coordinated care models that people can appreciate because they're used to it on a group plan. And that's attractive, right? Especially for lower income and middle income individuals that are aging in or disability in or diagnosis is into Medicare. So MA's not going away. Let's be upfront about this. Unless some federal regulation comes down the pipe, which I have no reason to believe will, MA's not going anywhere. But the hypergrowth may be over. Here's my thesis, or at least my opinion on this. We may be entering into a maturation phase with Medicare Advantage where it's not exponential expansion like we've seen. No, it's not collapse either. More like a stabilization period. in this maturation phase, margins are going to matter a whole lot more. Their bid discipline will increase. Their benefit inflation is going to slow. Plan exits that you've seen recently will become more and more common, and enrollment volatility is going to increase across the board. And when enrollment volatility increases, the predictability becomes valuable again, not only for the carrier, but also for the member and the agent. And that's where you're going to see Medigap re-enter the conversation, especially for agents who were solely pushing Medicare Advantage, or for members who found that $0 premium really attractive. Here's the key. This is not an MA versus Medigap conversation. This is an equilibrium conversation. Let me explain. My opinion, a healthy Medicare market doesn't sit at 80% MA, but it also doesn't sit at 20% Medicare Advantage. There's a balance point that we have to strike between traditional Medicare supplemented with a Medigap and a Medicare Advantage plan. The question is, have we found it where we currently are at near 50-50, or are we still adjusting here? I don't know the answer to that. If MA penetration stabilizes at the 50 to 55% national mark, what's going to happen to Medigap pricing over the next decade? What's going to happen to broker compensation models over the next decade? What's going to happen to SSBCI, or supplemental benefit expectations, or plan design competition amongst the carriers? Because that's ultimately what I believe the next strategic move will be about. And I'm not trying to push some fear on you guys. It's structural content that we need to digest, because if we're selling Medicare long term, which I imagine most of us are, we should care more about the structure than the headlines we're receiving. And I know a lot of you got an email today that scared you. Don't let that put fear in you. I fully believe the market is readjusting. It's not going anywhere, and MA, including MA comp, will be here for a long, long time.